Okay, we're going to make a GPU tier list. So 4090 goes in S tier, 4080 Ti it goes into B because it's not the most cost effective. 4070 goes into B, 3080 Ti S tier, 3060, where is 3060 Ti? Yeah, 3080 is S tier, 3060 Ti is, I would say A tier. 3070, A tier, 3090. I would say A or B if you can do the power limits and get it for cheap, but we'll put it in the B tier just to cost. And then 3070 Ti, not great. 3060 is okay, B. Yeah, I'm not gonna rate the other ones because I don't have a bunch of experience with AMD cards yet. But this would be my quick rating. So some of you might be familiar with the different form factors of GPUs, but the consumer form factor, basically, NVIDIA has terms of service, so you can't just use, like, you can't make a 4090 in one of the other form factors or a 4070. They make it so that these are meant for desktop use, right? So they usually have 3 fans on them, and these are generally quieter than a blower style like workstation, and the fans are basically, there's a big heatsink on the GPU, and the fans blow the air out and away from the card. And then so you need basically air pressure in the case. You have fans in the front or exhaust, bringing cool air in from the top or in from the front, and then blowing across the GPU out the back. And this is how you cool a consumer card. A workstation card, these are called blower style, where they suck the air in here and then blow the air out the back. And so these, obviously the big advantage is they're much smaller. These are actually, so there is a PCIe standard for like actual physical dimensions of a full length, half height, half length. There are extremely specific physical dimensions, but these cards, the professional cards, actually adhere to that, so they can fit, like, say 2 or 3 into a workstation, where consumer cards are just willy-nilly in whatever size. Basically there's 2 slot or 3 slot or 4 slot, or but they're just, some of them can be longer, and they just make them whatever size they want. So the important part here is that you can't take a blower card, you can't take one of these consumer GPUs and put it on a blower. NVIDIA terms of service doesn't allow that. Now, some Chinese companies and other guys do that, but NVIDIA does not like that, or does not technically allow it. But again, these take the cool air in here and shoot it at the back. And again, the benefit is you can stack a bunch of them in a small form factor. And you have really nice cards like the 4000 ADA. The 4000 SFF ADA is like the only single slot card that you don't need a power connector. It's just 70 watts. You can just plug it into a 1U server that doesn't have a GPU power connector. The other big thing about these workstation cards is they have the power connector on the back. And so, like, a consumer card is going to have the power connector on the top, whereas a data center or workstation card has the power connector on the back of the card. And that's obviously really important because quite literally you can't fit if there's a server that supports, let's see if they have a picture of the back. Of course not. Basically, if you have a server that supports double slot blower cards, then they're not going to be able to fit a consumer card because the connector is going to be in the wrong location. And then you have the data center cards, which are the most expensive, but these are called passive double wide or single wide cards, and these are just one giant heatsink, right? So an H100 or L40S, these actually don't have any fans on them. They're just one giant heatsink, and you need to have the fans on the server. And so the obvious benefit of this is that you want to have a bunch of these all in very close proximity, and you have the platform. You're not wasting any power on the card doing fans. You're actually using the fans from the system to cool the cards. Hey guys, it's JM. I made a spreadsheet to compare GPU farming efficiency for a bunch of NVIDIA cards. Now, this spreadsheet turns out will be useful for comparing any workload that you want to compare versus different NVIDIA GPUs. And so the way I put this together was I put the cards up here, and I have included some of the new cards that NVIDIA just announced with the 4070 Super, 4070 Ti Super, and 4080 Super. So you'll see the consumer cards over here, the data center cards here, which are the passive double wide cards that are for use in high density servers. And then the workstation cards, which these are typically your blower style GPUs that have the fan intake on the front of the card, and then it actually blows it hot air out the back. So these are for jamming a bunch of cards into a workstation, and they have different airflow characteristics than a consumer card. So for the most part, they're all PCIe Gen 4. Besides the H100 is the only Gen 5 card that they have out. So what I put in here, I put the CUDA cores, the boost clock, and the base clock, and I'm not really using the base, but I'm just using the number of CUDA cores times the boost clock and calculating the floating point 32 flops. Now this should be a pretty good indication. It's like this plus memory bandwidth that is kind of indicative of performance, and of course power, because if you the higher the power, the higher the boost clock can be for a longer sustained period of time with the number of cores. But then I match that to, I just did a basic calculation of core count times the boost clock times 2 divided by 1,000 gigahertz to floating, FP 32 teraflops. And then I basically listed what NVIDIA puts on their website in their spec sheet and compared my calculated number versus theirs. So it's pretty close. And so I put the power here, and you have two really interesting metrics. You have teraflops per watt, and then you have dollar per teraflop. And I've just basically taken the ASP of the cards. For the 3 series cards I'm using used prices, because you're typically not buying a 3 series new. These are older cards. Again, you can, if you have specific pricing, you can make a copy of this sheet and put in your own pricing. If you and we'll go through that. But yeah, so for the important part is there's two kind of interesting characteristics, right? So I've kind of graded this, where you get this teraflops per watt, which in you really want the highest number of output for the lowest amount of power. You can see something like an L4 or an L40S, like tremendously power efficient, but the dollar per teraflop is insanely high. Right? You pay a huge premium for that efficiency and that data center form factor. But there are some really interesting cards, and I'll talk about my favorite cards. So the 4090 is just an absolute beast. So you'll see, typically the Chia farming will follow the teraflops, and so you can just look at if a card like a 4090 has 82 teraflops, that should theoretically outperform be 2x over 2x of what a 3090 or 3090 Ti is, and typically actually we see just about that in practice. And then the dollar per teraflop is easy. We just calculate it from the cost and the FP32 performance. So this row P is I got this from the community spreadsheet from the GigaHorse Discord. There's some folks that have contributed their PIB filter to 56 of C18, and then I'm basically just making sure that they're all in the right format. You can do your dollar per PIB of farming, and so theoretically the lowest number here should be your most efficient card for plotting. And for farming, but and by the way, plotting kind of follows the same general thing, but maybe a little bit more focus on. There's more focus on memory bandwidth, so some of the cards that don't do as well. I also don't think GigaHorse has the ADA stuff properly configured yet, as far as I understand, for the plotting. But so for farming, what you would do is basically you go to Max's repo, and you go to his ChiaPOS folder. There's Linux or Windows, and you can pick your right version. But he has this Chia proof of space binary, right? And so you can run this proof of space, and then you could run farm, and then -f, and then you want to run your plot. And you could run with a diff, and so this is like simulating pool difficulty. So if you're in, I think the default is 100. We could just try the default first. And so you basically just run this command, and it's going to use your GPU. And you can see here, this is going to ramp up my GPU to 100%, nearly should. And this is my 4090 that's in my gaming desktop. Again, I'm not using this for Chia harvesting, but I really do think 4090 is an incredible pick just because of the efficiency. But you can see it's just going to run through 1,000 challenges, and it'll do, depending on the difficulty, it may have to do. These are just doing quality checks, but some of them actually do foolproof lookups based on like a pool difficulty and getting, receiving a partial that you have to do a full proof of space on. And so you can see here the output here, a 4090 on the default settings can do 5.2 PIB at max farm size. Now that's I have some stuff running in the background, which is why it's usually like 10 or something like that. Yeah, you can see I'm doing the recording and the video encode of the OBS, but typically the 4090 is actually like almost 10 PIB at filter 512, and so the 4090 is 4.895 is what they got from the spreadsheet. So yeah, it's just an absolute beast, right? I use C18. You can obviously put whatever C level you want here, but C18 is what I'm using, so that's why I'm comparing C18. So you can see from the spreadsheet the other ones that stand out, and again, I would love to get this whole thing filled out if people can contribute, but you can obviously see that the 3080 Ti at $500 is amazing, in dollar per PIB farming. It'll farm 5 petabytes at filter 512 and 2.5 petabytes of C18 at filter 256. 3080 is another, by the just benchmarks I've seen, have been an amazing card, especially for if you can get them for $400 to $450. They are not as efficient, right? Your teraflops per watt is half of the 4090, right? So your OpEx is going to be 2x, right? It's going to cost 2x the amount of energy. Now, so people have done some cool stuff, like done a 3090, but run it at power limit 250. So taking that, 350 watts. Actually, I think some of the 3090s I've seen are at 420 watts. Taking those down to like 250 watts, and actually runs. You maybe lose 20% of the performance, but you're running at a much lower power. So again, not if you care about just best value for the card, then you're not going to run these at a lower power. But you can see, so if you care about only cost for the cards, the 3 series like 3060, 3060 Ti, 3070, 3080, 3080 Ti are just incredible value. I thought I had the 3060 Ti data in here, but he actually includes it in the Gigahorse. I'll run it and throw it back in there. But his 3060 Ti is his kind of benchmark, which is C18. I think he's got max at filter 512, 2.45 petabytes. So what I'll do is get this filled in. If people want to leave the comments on the sheet, directly in the, like, you can say whatever, insert comment of what you have measured. I could throw it in here. But again, 4090 is just an absolute beast, and all the 3 series just generally perform extremely well as far as dollar per petabyte farming, but not going to be as efficient. Of course, I would love to get some of these data center or workstation cards, but none of them are competitive just from a price performance, and so it really doesn't make any sense to use these unless, for instance, you already have them. And so with this kind of with these kind of numbers, you can go into your run pod, and then you can look at, say for instance, there's Community Cloud, like 4070 Ti at 25 cents an hour. That's actually a very, very good price for if you don't have local compute to be able to do remote decompression, and something even like, you can see here, like a 3080 is 18 cents an hour. That's an incredibly good deal if you don't have GPUs to do decompression. You can see I have my little Giga Recompute Ubuntu template, which I'm using just right now as while I'm moving some GPUs around. I have some 24090s deployed in the cloud, so I can actually do this stuff without having any downtime on my farmer. But yeah, let me know if this is helpful, and thanks.